Okay, so we are now going to look at cardiovascular endurance. So cardiovascular endurance is the ability of your heart, blood vessels and lungs to supply oxygen to working muscles during physical activity for a prolonged period of time. So obviously our heart, blood vessels and lungs are always supplying oxygen to our muscles and to our organs, otherwise we'd drop dead. So it's during increased physical activity, and that kind of increased physical activity is for a prolonged period of time. So some people know cardiovascular endurance as stamina, and they might also call it stamina in the exam. So be aware that it could be both those things. And when you're remembering the definition, you want to make sure that you remember heart, blood vessels and lungs supplying oxygen. You could just call it your circulatory system if you wanted, or heart, blood vessels and lungs. So they are working at an increased rate during physical activity for a prolonged period of time. Okay, so make sure you're not just saying it's the ability of the heart, blood vessels and lungs to supply oxygen to your body, because they always do that, touch wood. Okay, so just for a second, what's the definition? Get it written down. Pause this, get it written down, then double check. Were you right? So, why, before we get on to like even why we need stamina, like for our dance performance, why does our body need that oxygen anyway? So we're going back to GCSE biology here. We're having a bit of a recap of what happens in our bodies. So we need oxygen for respiration. And respiration is the process of creating energy within our muscles. And our muscles need energy in order to contract. And every movement of our body is created via a muscle contraction. So we need those muscles to contract to be able to move. And we need energy to be able to do that. And in order to create that energy in our muscles, we need a good supply of oxygen. So, little reminder, cardiovascular endurance is the ability of your heart, blood vessels and lungs to supply oxygen, which we need to create energy, to working muscles during physical activity for a prolonged period of time. So why do we need cardiovascular endurance? When does stamina come into play in our performances or our dance classes? So pause this, write some ideas down, and then let's have a look at what I came up with. So we need to have good stamina to be able to perform really explosive, powerful movement, and to perform with full energy for a whole dance piece. So if you think about your solo performances, for example, if we look at like Lily's, that was full of jumps and really exhausting, explosive movement, she needs to make sure that performing her final section was as energetic and as sustained as her previous sections, because she was showing the wind sculpture, so she didn't want to just collapse at the end. She needed to make sure that that was shown all the way through, and I'm sure everyone has that. Same with your duets. Your duets are really good for finding examples of when you needed stamina towards the end of the piece to keep conveying the message of your choreography. We also need good stamina to avoid getting really tired, which could cause injury. So when you get tired, you're more likely to kind of go over on your ankle, because you start losing control, you start losing those muscular contractions, which are there to kind of keep us on track and keep our alignment, maintain our posture and alignment and everything like that, which helps for a safe performance and a really engaging performance as well. As soon as you start getting tired, we start to lose that muscular strength, which is really important to prevent us from injuring ourselves. So, how do we improve our cardiovascular endurance? Well, before we even get on to how we do it, why can we improve? Like, it seems really weird that we can improve stamina, but our heart is a muscle. And like all other muscles, we can strengthen it by working on it, and it will adapt to the workload given if we make it work harder. So just like strength, that's exactly what we're kind of doing to our heart muscles, but in a slightly less extreme way. And to make sure we work our heart muscles, we can't just lift a weight with them, can we? So we need to find other ways to do it. So we use high intensity interval training. So to improve our cardiovascular endurance, you use high intensity interval training. This is where our heart rate is raised to between 85% and 100% of maximum heart rate. So making our heart work really hard. So the way we make our heart work really hard is by pushing it for short, intense bursts of exercise. So our favourite form of high intensity interval training are sprints. So you might do a 60-second sprint followed by a rest period of jogging to reduce your heart rate again. And you repeat that a couple of times, just going back to those 3 R's. So our resistance is kind of, it's our heart kind of really working to push our body through the space, and we're repeating that workout to make sure our heart is being pushed and being made to work really hard. And so by repeating a number of times per workout, we're helping to really develop our cardiac strength, so the strength of the muscle, which is our heart. So if we have a look, this is what our heart rate does during a sprint. So you start off and your heart rate goes up, and then you've got your jogging, so it drops right back down again. Then you sprint again, so it goes right back up again, then you're jogging, so it goes back down. And actually, it is much harder for your heart to speed up than it is to maintain a constant speed, and that's where kind of that hard work comes in. That's why high intensity interval training is so effective, because we're not just working at one constant level. Our heart's having to work even harder by keeping on working at accelerating our heart rate. If you think about driving, you use a lot more petrol, kind of speeding up and slowing down than just driving at a constant speed. And it's just the same with kind of effort with our heart. So, cardiovascular endurance is the ability for blood vessels and lungs to supply oxygen to working muscles during physical activity for a prolonged period of time. That is our definition. It is improved through high intensity interval training, such as our favourite sprints, and we're able to improve our cardiovascular endurance because the heart is a muscle, so we can improve the strength of the heart and make sure that it's able to work at that higher rate for a prolonged period of time. By improving our cardiovascular endurance, we're going to improve our stamina. We're going to improve our performance skills, because we're not going to be so knackered that we forget about what our face is doing, or anything like that. And we're also going to make sure that we're preventing injury as well.